try to remember back to when all this happened.
This is Lima, the director of the Goofy movie.
I was a first-time director. I had a first-time head of story, first-time lead editor. I thought we had the opportunity to make a John Hughes movie in animation. Let's make a movie that is about contemporary teenagers, as opposed to what feature animation was doing, which was all talking animal movies and fairy tales, even though these are kind of talking animal movies.
All right, guys, let's do this.
Jeffrey Katzenberg was talking about going on a vacation with his daughter, and they weren't quite getting along, and he thought that might be an interesting subject matter for the story of Goofy and Max.
A father who's worried about his son and where he's going.
I know there were production challenges. We were doing it in a reduced sort of capacity.
When you look back in time at it, there was something, pretty magical about the whole thing.
The magic trick animation is getting you to feel for it.
There is that universal connection people end up having. You can't ask for more than that.
I would love to have them be moved by who Goofy is and by how he relates to his son.
To adventure!
Disney didn't know what they had.
It was different.
Okay, this is cool.
It was the voice of a generation.
Oh, Dad.
Okay, you can go now. Here, we're gonna do this tricky shot again.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Disney Reel to Reel, a deep, deep, deep delve into the Disney animated canon. I'm Wyatt, and today this little indie project finally makes the big leagues as we discuss the documentary Not Just a Goof, coming to Disney Plus April 7th. Joining me now are the men behind the film and its subject, 1995's A Goofy Movie. We have director Lima here, as well as Eric Kimelton. Guys, welcome to Disney Reel to Reel.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, great being here.
Yes. Now, let me start off by saying that this documentary is very lovely, honest, and sensitive about a surprisingly troubled production. Eric, in a general sense, without giving too much away, what did making this film mean to you?
Well, both Chris and I, this is like our favorite animated film of all time. It's actually the film that Chris and I bonded over when we first met. It's the first thing that we had in common, and we both worked for Kevin when we were starting out in the entertainment industry out in LA. And this film both means a lot because it hit us at a very pivotal time in our childhood. And it's kind of great to see through doing this documentary that we're not the only ones who felt that way. And actually, when we were starting out this whole process, this film was going to be about the fandom of a Goofy movie and how there was this groundswell of people all over the world and on the internet that thought this movie, a Goofy movie, was underrated and deserved to be in the same talks as like Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and all those from the Disney Renaissance. But through some lucky breaks and some great archival skills of Kevin here, we got to turn from making it about the fandom to making it for the fandom, while also still being able to highlight the fans who have made the film what it is today.
Oh, that is a very sweet endeavor. Speaking of which, I would concur that I do feel a Goofy movie is comparable to a lot of the films made during that period because of the great amount of passion put into it. But we also have to acknowledge that in this documentary, you devote a lot of time to studio chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg, who, from most accounts I've read and watched, he was a great taskmaster, often making rash executive decisions. After all, if he had his way initially, part of your world would have been cut from The Little Mermaid. But what do you hope viewers will take away from learning about his time working at the Walt Disney Studios?
I think from my perspective and Chris' perspective, it's that Jeffrey really was like a champion for a Goofy movie. And that if it wasn't for him helping push this, type of filmmaking at the time, we wouldn't have a Goofy movie. Now, you had Kevin and all the people that had to like put it all together and like, really develop the story and all those like interesting character dynamics and amazing music that we see. But he truly, like, we do think he's kind of like a hero in our film for a Goofy movie. I mean, Kevin can speak to what it was like during that time way better than I can.
Of course.
Do you want me to speak to it?
Of course, yes, please.
I agree. I think the portrayal in the movie is very honest. Jeffrey, how they portrayed Jeffrey. He was your greatest taskmaster. He was very demanding. I think the movie is as emotional as it is, partly because of his wanting it to be. And at the same time, he didn't always have the best ideas in the room, right? He knew how to point to a problem, but he didn't necessarily know how to solve the problem. And that really fell upon us. And often we had to convince him that an idea he had wasn't necessarily the best idea for the movie and to let us solve it a different way. And at the end of the day, his not being at the studio when the film was released was, I think, detrimental to the movie. It didn't get the big push that it really deserved at the time, because he was the champion. And I'd say that other branches of the studio didn't want a small movie out there that cost, $20 million, making a whole lot of money. It didn't service their path. So, I can't complain today. And I hope when he sees the film, he takes it in the right spirit. We do poke a little fun at him at times. But I do think we've captured him as truly what he was, a champion and a taskmaster all rolled into one.
Now, one of the great highlights for me was actually the inclusion of the live-action reference footage for Eye to Eye. Kevin, what inspired a Goofy movie to acquire such a hip sensibility?
Well, I knew when we were making the movie that we couldn't compete with what was being made across the street, right? They were making the big fairy tales and, big talking animal movies at the time. And I knew we couldn't compete with that on our budget. So I attempted to go to another place. I said, let's make a John Hughes movie. Is that possible? To make a different kind of movie with these characters. And that's what sort of led us down that more contemporary, modern, at least for 1995, contemporary film. And to basically place it within its time with characters that our audience could relate to. So Max became a high school kid. He falls for this girl. He lies. He does some pretty terrible things in the movie, as most teenagers do as they're trying to figure out who they are. But at the end of the day, the message really comes across, I think, in the music even, that that we all just have to see each other differently, right? We all have to look at each other and see each other for who we are. And that's the journey that all of us go on with our parents, I think. And our parents go on with their kids.
And especially carrying that on to the struggle that you guys had in trying to humanize Goofy and not let the interpretation, like, what's the word I would want to use? Interfere with the prior public perception of that character.
Yeah.
How did you go about walking that line with Goofy?
It was a gradual path, really. Is that, in animation, we're very, very lucky to be able to see the movie before we make the movie. We edit the movie in storyboards. So what we found over time was that the emotional story kept wanting to push forward. And we just decided not to fight it anymore. We said, let's let Goofy evolve. Let's show another side of him. Let's show a side of him that can carry a 78-minute movie, right? Let's get some depth. And that just led us to continually sort of mine that. And as we said earlier, Jeffrey pushed for that, knowing that his audience would want more than just, a series of gags all tied together. And it was, as you in the documentary, you can see it was a journey to get there. We had to go down some roads that were not fun in order to discover the movie as it is today.
And I guess my final question, it does kind of relate to the fan testimonials that you guys share near the end, including some of my favorite YouTubers. I love the shout outs to Movie Bitches and Lakia JTV. I love them a good deal. For both of you, I could ask, well, I guess I'll start with Kevin. If you had to pick one of your 4 films to represent your legacy as a filmmaker, would it be a Goofy movie?
I have to love all my children equally, Wyatt.
Of course. And that's what every filmmaker wants, of course.
You can't play favorites. It's really hard for me because I like them all for different reasons. This movie in particular, I'd never guessed that this movie would have gotten the following that it has. More than any of my other movies, this one is just adored. And I have an affection for it because of that. Mm-hmm. Because the audience has not only expressed its love for it, but in a lot of circumstances, they've taken the movie and used it as a platform to talk about other things. I don't know if you've seen the Atlanta episode, the goof that sat at the door, but it's kind of shocking because they do a mockumentary about the creation of a Goofy movie. And ultimately, it becomes a platform to talk about something much, much bigger, culturally bigger than the movie. And that in and of itself is just it's something to be proud of, that the movie is bigger than the movie.
Mm-hmm. And Eric, if you could speak to having grown up with that legacy and how that informed your relationship with Christopher.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a Goofy movie for us, I feel is it was speaking to very universal things. One, the lighter side of trying to be cool at school and fit in and everything, but then the whole, the deeper side is the relationship with your parents or your father, and having to grow up and find your own life outside of just your family. And we touch upon it in our film a little bit, both from each of our personal stories, but we had father issues growing up, and this movie came out at a time where it really gave a voice to that. And personally, it let me know that there is a good relationship. You can have a good relationship with your father even if it wasn't necessarily happening at home. I don't know if that answered your question.
No. That was very, very powerful.
So the movie ends up being very, very personal for many of us. And in fact, I had to actually ask the guys to put those personal stories into the movie. At the first cut I saw of it, those stories weren't there. And I had to twist their arms to actually, come on, you guys have a relationship to this movie that I think would make the documentary, more interesting and immediate. And so I was really happy to see them grab a hold of that and share what they had been through. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very happy that that you wanted to express yourself within, like, make room for yourself within the documentary.
We see so many of these documentaries that are really just about the nuts and bolts of how a movie's made. And I think what's special about what the guys have done, Chris and Eric, is that they've created something that is about not only their relationship to the movie, but I think the audience's relationship to the movie. Beyond how we physically made the movie, it is about what the movie means to others. Right? So it's this two-way street, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Very, very powerful. But I believe that's the time we have.
All righty.
But thank you guys for coming to talk with me. I really appreciate this.
You're so welcome.
No
Thank you for supporting us.
Of course. And if you happen to see Bill or Jason in the future, tell them I said hello. But
will too. Absolutely will. I'm sure we'll see them.
Yeah. But yes, Not Just a Goof debuts on Disney Plus April 7th. I will leave social media links for listeners to find you all on social media.
Great.
For me, you can find our show at DisReelToReal Podcast on Instagram. Any emails can be sent to DisneyReelToReal@gmail.com. And I suppose if you guys are willing to indulge me, I'd like to try closing out with a bit of a goofy laugh. I've really been practicing, so.
Okay.
All right. Yuck.
Yuck.
Oh, yes. Why did I think of that?
All righty.
Excellent. But have a magical day, everybody.
Bye-bye, Wyatt.